every Sunday, God willing, around 2 p.m. Eastern Time with Let's Just Chat. Here we are, here we are, here we are. All right, let those notifications go out. We're going to talk about something. Just to let y'all know, we don't play the P game anymore because that's a big part of the game of narcissism. Okay, when you learn that all the world is a stage, and that we've been lied to since birth about almost everything, when that starts to sink in and you realize that even the news media, it's all made up. It's all part of the entertainment. And, you know, it takes a while to sink in. It really does. But when you realize that even the news media is part of the entertainment, it's not even real. When you realize that they engineer and manipulate the weather, that's not a secret. Who's paying attention and who's not? That's what it's all about. But you have to be mindful of that. But once it all sinks in that all the world is a stage and that we co-create our reality in God's reality, when you realize that, things look very different. The world out here will never look the same. It will never look the same. And that includes when you come across headlines and things like that, news stories. So let me go ahead while that is notifying, while YouTube is notifying everyone. I'm going to go ahead and do our usual check and pull up the chat over here, unless I need to go ahead and turn that on there. But we're going to talk about how the Matrix manipulates anything it can. Yeah, anything. It already does. See, that's the thing. A lot of people don't know this. But when we realize things out here are just illusions and all this stuff's made up, it's a make-believe world. I talk a lot about that. It is a make-believe world out there. And until we were awakened to all of that, yours truly, I thought that it was real. I thought that the P Matrix was a real thing. I thought that we were doing the right thing when we went into the little booth to cast our vote. I thought I was doing the right thing, and then I realized now, oh, that's how the devil keeps up with who's still playing the game. So we unregistered. Okay, we don't do that anymore because it's all a part of the game. It's just a big dog and pony show on the world stage. That's all it is. It's narcissistic abuse in action, 100%. So we don't play that game anymore. And I do notice, yes, hello. World stage. All right, and so welcome. I'm not going to read the article that our fellow warrior Chris sent to me. I'm not going to. We're just going to give you a little bit of a synopsis because I also saw on TikTok some sort of recent so-called alleged outer space trip, and there were some actresses, there's always actors and actresses filling these roles. And I said to myself, oh man, if they actually still believe that these people are actually going up in these little so-called, they need to do some serious research on Project Bluebeam and then green screen, blue screen. Let me tell y'all something. If you learn how to edit videos, you will learn real quick how easy it is to deceive people. How easy it is. And it is really, really easy. In fact, I put together a thing for the Jezebel case study just to illustrate how easy it was. although you could tell what I put together was fake, but it got the idea across as to if I put a little more effort into it and took the time to blend in some lines here or there, whatever, it would look very real. A dog sitting in the White House it would look very real. And you have to remember that. And for those of you who have been with us for a while, you know when I had StreamYard, we were doing the virtual backgrounds. That's green screen, blue screen. I was sitting right in the previous extended stay hotel room, the mini electrocution chamber. I was sitting right there or standing using a virtual background. So, I mean, it's really simple. Of course, if we didn't have the actual green screen, it was more noticeable that it wasn't real. But we had the actual green cloth that was required, and it looked very real. I even created some of our own backdrops. Y'all knew what was up. Y'all knew. Y'all knew I wasn't in the car. But see, those who are asleep and don't know about any of that will believe everything that the fake news media, and that includes everything. Journalism, another word that ends in ism. I know there's a lot of people that still go to school to become a journalist. I pray for them. That's all we can do. Pray for them. Because they're just basically trained how to lie. That's what they're taught. They're taught how to lie. It's unfortunate, but you know, that's what they do. And so it's really comical now because when it sinks in that all the world is a stage and that the Matrix, aka a control system out here, and so many things that we've been lied to about, and the only truth that we ever will know is God's word. That's it. That's the only truth there is. And then us being true to ourselves and speaking our truth. Chosen one. You know, we realized that they've been doing a lot of things. You know, putting chemicals in the air, chemicals in the water, poisoning everybody on a daily basis with excess salt, radio frequency poisoning. Yeah, I mean, once you let all that sink in, you start to purge that subconscious mind, then you know, when you look at these photos of the so-called big house on the hill in the United States, that ain't even real. I mean, the building's there, but the things that go on inside, it's like a big movie set. Oh, I'm going to tell y'all. Well, I went down the rabbit hole. I was on Telegram when I went down the rabbit hole. That's where I went down the rabbit hole. What's funny, though, well, not really funny, but intriguing, is that a lot of that stuff from the rabbit hole that I went down on Telegram is now surfacing on TikTok. It's now surfacing on TikTok. And I'm like, wow, I didn't think I'd see that again so soon. But yeah, I also saw a half and half photo. I saw the green screen on one side and then the so-called presidential jet movie set. I said, of course. Of course. And then we see the fake planes all the time around here. You know, the ones that are flying too low or going too slow with no sound. Okay, that's Project Bluebeam. That's not a real plane. So I'm like, oh gosh, wow, okay. So once all that sinks in, and you gotta be careful when you come across these news stories, because this one that Chris shared with us, thank God, you found it because it inspired this topic. So thank you. It talks about how the I guess you could say science or whatever technology can be used to manipulate time and space. Oh, it manipulates the time all the time. What do you think daylight savings is? A very unnecessary, exactly. That's manipulating time right there. Yo, 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 ding, 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 ding. I heard somebody's light bulb just went off. Like, wait a minute. Yeah. See? Daylight savings time. Why? In the 21st century, at the time of this video, why? Why are we still doing that? Because it gets the rise out of people. People continue to believe that they lose or they gain an hour's sleep using technology to manipulate time. Daylight savings time, that's one example. Clock go up or back, depending on the time of year. Very unnecessary. But then, that's what I'm saying, that when you realize all the world is a stage, and it's just like, whoa, you have to start unlearning a lot of stuff. And as you do that, you start to see that, yeah, things are not as they seem at all. And you look at the photos that are used to accompany that news story, and how the actors are really good at looking so serious. I could not help but laugh. So I was like, yeah, they want to tell you that within 5 years, I don't know how many times we've been hearing this over the last several years. In 5 years, it's been 3 already, but no, it's still another. In 5 years, they're gonna try and send some actors. The correct word is actor. They're gonna try to send some actors to Mars. You ain't gonna get there. That little, oh my gosh, yeah, the visual that they have given us before we were awakened. I remember this. They were giving us visuals of like drones or something that allegedly landed on Mars. And now we know better. I'm like, nah. That's green screen, blue screen, Project Bluebeam right there. Yeah, You ain't getting past God's firmament. It ain't gonna happen. No, you're not getting past that firmament. So, yeah, that whole spiel, you know, we've seen it in the movies, right? Outer space in the movies with satellites and stuff. Yeah, right. They ain't real. There ain't no satellites out there outside the firmament. No. Why do you think we gotta have Wi-Fi and 5G and all of this? Why? Think about that. If there really were satellites out there tracking everything, why do you need video cameras at traffic lights and on buildings? Why do you need video cameras if there's really satellites doing all of that? Why do you need these drones? Like Google Maps uses drones. Okay, that's not... but they tell you it's a satellite image. No, it ain't. No, it ain't. It's a drone. See, people don't pay attention. But see, because almost everybody can, here in the United States anyway, almost anybody can get themselves a drone now as a toy. You won't be able to... Yeah, that's a distraction. That's a distraction. They want you to believe that the maps, you see like Google Maps, Apple Maps and all of that, they want you to believe that that's a satellite image. Them drones, oh, they've been around for decades. That's your satellite. The drones. There ain't no satellite in outer space. What? Because you're not going to get through God's firmament. Mm-mm. So, well, the planes that fly in the sky can only go so high. Ain't gonna go no higher than what they can. I mean, I know. Ding, 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 ding. Right. Another news flash for somebody right there. Got to unlearn that. There ain't nothing floating around in outer space tracking nothing. There ain't no drones on no planets except Earth. Yeah. That's why I said, let's just chat. This is real stuff, y'all. Real stuff. This is reality. This is God's reality. It's a make-believe world out there. So I'm going to tell you, when you learn all the world is a stage and you come across these fake news stories and then you look at the actors looking so serious and you can't help but laugh. I did. I laughed. I went, oh. That's why we've said many times, when I was down in the rabbit hole, you heard it a lot. Asking for popcorn, people telling people to enjoy the show. Enjoy the show. Oh, yeah. The Big Dog and Pony Show. Because that's where I started to realize that the P Matrix was a big part of the game of narcissism. Yes. While I was down in the rabbit hole, it's just started to stand out so clear that I was like, wow. And then I remember walking by the television when I was living with the two Jezebels before all that crazy making took place. And they had the fake news on, of course. And seeing grown adults riding little toddler tricycle. Go figure. I said, wow. Grown men in their 30s and 40s riding little tricycle. Anywho, so that being said, promoting narcissism, but it perked my spiritual ears up when I heard them talking about pride. I said, oh my gosh. God tells us, pride goeth before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall. He also tells us not to have high-mindedness. Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought to. You got to remember, this is right after God led me back to the Bible. I started learning it, and the Holy Spirit. We're paying attention now, because I'm like, hold on. And then I learned that even that's fake, and that all that is staged. And I watched down in the rabbit hole, I watched some events being staged for the fake media. In other words, the night before, even local law enforcement, I forget where it was, they were in on it. They were making it, they were making a fake crime scene. Saw it in action right there on Telegram, down in the rabbit hole. So now I question everything. Like we're supposed to. Like, how much of that stuff is real, we don't know. And that some local authorities and others will be in on it because they think it's a game. But it is a game of narcissism. But they got to stage those kinds of events just to have something to report on the fake news. And then the fake news is reporting a fake event. Cognitive dissonance in action, yes. So, yeah, thank you, Chris. Oh, see what I'm talking about right here. That heightened awareness. There you go. Okay, I'm scene, get it? Yeah, like a scene in a play, scene in a movie. Exactly. Y'all got to pay attention to Matrix and stuff. They don't put words together just to put them together. There's hidden messages and you just caught it. Congratulations. You got it. Like the scene in a movie or a scene in a play. SCENE. Why do they spell crime scene that same way? I mean, I guess you know what? Right, you don't want to spell it crime S-E-E-N. But yeah. And then also cameras attached to balloon. Exactly. Any way that the Matrix can get a camera into the sky and make it look like a satellite image. A balloon. Of course. Helicopters and whatnot. Yes, that's another fake narrative. Oh, I remember that one. Said that the world's going to end in 12 years. And it's like, oh, we heard that like 20 years ago. Exactly. This is the kind of stuff y'all got to be paying attention to out here. Same old recycled narrative. And people will, oh my gosh, the only reason they do that is because people continue to still fall for them. As long as people continue to fall for the deception, well, the devil's going to continue to use the same tactics. Because he's not original. And as long as that still works to get people duped. Of course. Of course. So, okay, there you go, right. And that's exactly what they are. And I don't know if all of them are like billionaires. You know what I'm saying? Well, we got to take that with a grain of salt, too, because we learn all the world is a stage and that they make stuff up all the time. So they make up numbers. They make up all kinds of stuff. And it's like I've asked before, I said, you got to think about this, too. Like, it's really comical because this is cognitive dissonance in action. But it's like here, I don't know about y'all in other places, but it's just something to help y'all put things in perspective, how we're starting to think now in God's reality. I mean, seriously, we live, okay, I'm in the United States, a country that claims to be trillions of dollars in debt, but yet the Matrix, the credit card company, right, the very people, they're out here contributing to and claiming that the country is trillions of dollars in debt, but yet they get to dictate what our credit score is. Make it make sense. I have said that before. I want y'all to make that make sense. You can't do it because it doesn't. It don't make sense. And so, right, it's just part of the game of narcissism. It's how they use finances to abuse people. Because if your credit score ain't good enough, then you ain't going to get this or you can't get that. They're using the credit score as a control tactic. While the country is trillions of dollars in debt, and the average consumer with credit card is, okay, say the average debt might be between 10 and 20 on average. Some might be more, but 10 to 20 grand, 10 to 20,000 in debt compared to trillions of dollars in debt. But yet, if our credit score being determined by the same people, evil plays both sides, right? Yeah, it's that dangling carrot. It's that dangling carrot. And so, you're talking about the big kids, the actors on the world stage, right, playing with rockets that go up and come straight back down. Exactly. You know the old saying, what goes up must come back down. Okay, well, that applies to a lot of things inside that matrix. But it will manipulate, and that's what we're talking about here, is how the matrix manipulating your mind, playing mind games with you about all kinds of stuff. All kinds of things that are just illusion in the first place. Debt is an illusion, apparently. Living in a country trillions of dollars in debt, but yet they get to dictate what our credit score is when the average person with credit cards is 10 to 20,000 in debt, they say. Where'd they get that money from? I learned from some people in the business how they come up with mortgages. You go to apply for a mortgage. This is crazy. You go and you apply for a mortgage to get a house. The bank don't have $250,000 on hand for that. They just pull a number out of thin air. It's all made up. And then you paying the interest So basically, they're not giving you the money. You're actually giving them the money. Ding, 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 ding. Plus interest. When they, in reality, all they did was make it look like they gave you a loan on paper. Make it make sense. Okay, so. Yeah, and exactly. And then the retcon photo's been around since exactly. Exactly. See, this is what I'm saying. Y'all pay attention to certain photos and things that just continue to circulate ever since airplanes were able to get into the air and fly. Yep. And then why do you allow credit and credit cards in the first place if there's so much debt? Because debt is an illusion. Nothing to be afraid of. You ain't taking it with you. Yeah, Jesus is like, no, you ain't taking it where Jesus is taking you. Right. Well, yeah, people catch up with it or still wipe the debt altogether. I know. Yeah, money becoming an abstract number on a computer and money doesn't exist. Yep, there you go. That's the scam right there. How we work to give them money that never existed in the first place. Ding, 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 ding. Oh my goodness. There you go. I mean, let that sink in. But yet, we've got to have the money in order to pay for a hotel room, put gas in our car, food on the table. And so that's why we say that it circulates, money circulates. So even though it in and of itself is made up, it has to be brought into existence for the matrix that has the love of money in order for us to really have anything or be able to do anything, to be able to pay our bills. I know. Crazy, but that's the way it is. And so that's why God calls the love of money the root of all evil, because it really is. And when you realize that there's a lot of that stuff made up on the world stage and how the matrix manipulates all of that, especially numbers. This is why when we talked about that in the book of Revelation, in the recent Bible study, we learned that the numbers of however many chosen ones there are doesn't really matter as long as we remember and understand that God still has 2/3 of his righteous angels. As long as we remember that, regardless of what's going on, we good. Because the actual number of true chosen one, we're never going to know that. And so they're telling us that there's 8+ billion people on this planet, on Earth. I suspect there's way more than that, but that's all. It's just it's the manipulation of numbers game for them, because that's all we got to go by. Like I talk a lot about for our combat against radio frequency for healthier living. Okay, we got a label on. Let's say I've got a thing of peanut butter up there. It's got no sugar added. Yay! Or no added sugar is how it works. Anyway, but there's only 55 milligrams of sodium per serving, which is 2 tablespoons. Okay, that's not a whole lot. And 55 milligrams, that's not bad for creamy peanut butter. But do we really know that that's how much is in there? How do they know that there's 55 milligrams of sodium per serving before? I mean, what'd they do? Each little jar like that? Did they actually sit there and measure it out? No. Because they've got to produce how many jars of that peanut butter in a given day to get it on the shelf in the store. And most things in factories and food processing areas nowadays are done by machine. So, yeah, it could be more, it could be less. But because we live in a world that likes to make things look bigger than they really are, and likes to make mountains out of molehill, and it likes to, well, it likes to make things look, appear, if you will, larger than they really are, it makes more sense that there would probably be half of that per serving instead of 55. So they might have, well, I'm just saying, there could only be maybe there's only about 26 or 27 grams per serving, but they're not really sure, so let's double it just in case. That's the matrix way of thinking. That's what narcissists think also. Let's estimate it to the larger number. Let's double it just to be safe. But we really don't know how much sodium is in that per serving. So that's why we have to learn how to utilize our senses. And, right, because that radio frequency excess salt can numb the taste buds. Found that out. Oh yeah, tried and true. We found that out not long ago. Yeah, we realized, hold on a minute. Because that would mask, the radio frequency poisoning will mask the taste of salt in some foods, so you won't know how much salt you're actually consuming. Oh yeah. So, yeah, keep that in mind, all right, as part of our movement here in this ministry. And I realized, real quick, y'all, I realized that on the Facebook business page, I realized God is removing some people. God is removing some people. And I do know that there were some monitoring spirits who jumped on board to follow to see, because I know there was a short season right before we discovered that that was a mini electrocution chamber. Like, we got confirmation before I realized, okay, this is how they're doing it, and it was depriving my skin of oxygen. Once I realized that, we had to leave. We had to leave. See, when you become aware and God says, okay, it's time to go, once you know what's going on. And so I know before that, though, there was a time where I was moving a bit slower than usual. I was still putting out content, but we weren't as, let's just say we weren't as energetic as we usually have been. But now it's back. We're back! Full force, y'all. And back to business as usual. Because I know, Chris, when I sent you that email, I started laughing too. I was like, wait a minute. I said, he's going to read that and he's going to be like, oh boy, she's feeling better. She back. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Because we're discovering a lot more as we continue to navigate through the matrix. And so the monitoring spirits and narcissists and stuff, what they were doing is they were hoping that, yeah, that's what they were waiting on. They were hanging around to see if we were going to just fall off, or if we were going to give up and give in, or if we were just going to, like, quit this minute. No! No. This is another season of we just getting started. Better believe it. We're just getting started. I came out with that motivational message not long ago. And that's why. Because I knew. I said all this that was going down, all that was happening, it just took a little time to figure it out. And then to figure out what the Jezebel case study also did. Places where there was bruising that I didn't know about because I wasn't getting the oxygen to the skin. See, when your skin's not getting oxygen that it needs for healing, it will mask or hide some things for a while, because your body, your muscles especially, need oxygen for proper functioning too. So we discovered, right, it didn't take long after getting here, we discovered the little bit of bruising here, and then we discovered water hanging out here, because I was sitting on the bed. I was like, whoa, why did my circulation get interrupted? And then I looked over here and I said, oh, because there's water. There's it's called sweat, they say, that gets trapped between the skin. Okay, and so what was happening was that salt water just hanging out. And so when I bunched up, because of that excess skin holding that water, that hot water was slowing down circulation. I could feel it. And I said, oh, hold up a second now. You know, because you need circulation for healing. And so, yeah, I mean, little things, oh gosh, all kinds of things like that. And then I discovered some more going on back here in the spinal cord area, which is not major, but some additional muscle tension that I hadn't noticed until getting here. So that's that. And I mean, it's little things like that. And once we become aware of it, then we know where to self-care. And it's all minor. I mean, yeah, but it lets me know that it's been there the whole time. And so now I'm like, okay, what we got to do to take care of it and to prevent it from getting worse, which is not going to get worse now because we're aware of it. My ANS is like, oh, let me get to work. Okay. And boom, boom, boom. So one day at a time. But yeah, and we continue to see how the matrix manipulates out here. Anything it can. Anything that it can manipulate, it will. It's all part of the game of narcissism. So, yes. All right, now that you are, okay, we were talking about it. Okay, now let's get into a little bit of the and more. We're going to talk more about this movement here. Combating radio frequency. Okay. For healthier living. And okay, well, we're talking about how much salt is actually in the peanut butter. I don't know. What they do the math, divide a big batch by how many jars they produce. I don't know. I honestly, I don't know. And I'm just letting y'all know, I believe that, I just believe it's made up somehow. Maybe not for all things, but I think for a good majority of the labels that we read telling us how much sodium is in here, how much calcium, I think it's all made up. I think all those numbers are made up. I really do. I'm just like, yeah, because they play the numbers game out here, and they use numerology against us. Y'all can look up numerology. That's another way the matrix manipulates anything it can. It manipulates numbers using numerology and then making numbers up and then telling us through another agency that's also part of the make-believe world, telling us how, I mean, how do they know how much, okay, how do they know how much potassium in a day our body needs? How does anybody know that? Right? So how do they know that we should get 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day? How do they know that? Well, where does that number come from? So, that being said, we know on average that, yeah, how easy it is to consume way more than that. So, yeah, I believe a lot of those, I believe they are. I believe the numbers are made up. If you look at, okay, my multivitamin, this is what got me to thinking about that. As part of the combat, part of the research, to figure out, okay, wait a minute, I got multivitamin. It's telling me that there is this amount of B12. And then you look at the percentage based on what is recommended for the daily value. It's telling me, because it's a bottle of multivitamins for active women, which y'all, for those of you who've been with us for a while, you know, we weight training and all that. So, with that being said, and we're active, we speed walking, still walking, with all of that being said, it says the percentage of the B12 that's in the multivitamin is like, I'm just going to pull a number out. It'll say something like 167%. How is it that I'm going to take a multivitamin that is 67% more than the 100% recommended daily value, and why? because I'm active. I'm just using that as an example. Because you get B12 in animal meats and whole wheat bread. So I'm just, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Who gets, who? I say God. I say God. And so if your granola has a little bit of sugar but not too much, that's fine. Our biggest thing is you don't want to have excess. You don't want to have excess salt or excess sugars. If there's a couple grams of added sugars and it's not, and it's all natural, you know, like it's honey or molasses or something like that, but and it's not corn syrup or fructose, yeah, then you good. You good. That little bit's not, that's not a big deal. I have granola that has a few grams of added sugar, but it's from the honey. There you go. Yeah, it's not any fake sugars. That's what you want to watch out for too. You don't want to get that. And so then, does too much salt affect the stomach lining? Yes. Yes, and yes. I just dropped that on Patreon for y'all. As far as the truth being revealed. Okay? About acid reducers and too much salt and the taste bud. So this kind of dovetails, that question ties in line with that. But yes, too much salt. Because excess salt, okay, y'all, I got a big green toxicology book here. Okay? For those who haven't seen it yet, let me get it for you. My master's degree, for those who don't know, is in forensic toxicology. I had to learn about metal toxicity and metals or salts. And so this little baby right here, no, this definitely weighs less than my 15-pound dumbbell, okay? But, you see, this big baby right here. Okay, that is, oh yeah. And, oh my gosh. Not just, metal toxicities, and then I learned about bath salts. Okay, so that's all metals. Metal toxicity. Salt toxicity, metal toxicity, same thing. Radio frequency poisoning is essentially metal toxicity. So, that's why when I say in this movement, we got God's wisdom first and foremost, but, basic scientific fact to back it up. And then personal experience of going through 3 detoxes. So, excess salt, it is highly acidic. And it can eat away at the stomach lining. Yes, that's why they have acid reducers. But you want to be mindful of that, as I talk about in the Patreon channel. Be mindful of the acid reducer, how long you take it, and things like that, because it can also mask your taste bud. It is part of the 20% legit, but it's also used to mask excess salt in foods. So you gotta keep that in mind. So what's my tip? Okay, like I said in the Patreon video, the tip I have for you all, there's 2 herbs that, now there's more, I'm sure, but there's 2 herbs that I have learned about over the years that play a role in your digestive tract health, your GI tract, and that is DGL. Now that is a licorice, and it will soothe the stomach lining and the intestinal lining as well, but that's not something you want to take on a regular basis if you have not detoxed from excess salt first. Because I've had it happen to me before where I was taking it for several days in a row before I knew about the excess salt. And it did say it can actually hold sodium. And so I had very minor muscle cramps, okay, with it. And I said, okay, that telling me that we got to get some more potassium, we got to balance that out and not take the DGL until some excess salt I didn't know about radio frequency poisoning at the time. I didn't know about any of that. I just knew because I've always been the type to turn to all natural remedies to start with. I've always been that way. Give me some herbs. I'd rather do the herbal route first. I'd rather go homeopathic first. You know, I've been that way for many years. And even though there was a time where I used to take other pain relievers, over-the-counter stuff, I came to realize there were herbal alternatives. And so if I need to take an herbal alternative like Baswalia, which is frankincense for inflammation, then that's what we'll do. We go the herbal route. And so you have DGL. Okay, again, that will be much more effective and better if you have detox from excess salt so that you won't experience that minor side effect. Okay, now, slippery elm bark. Slippery elm bark is well known and has been around for decades. Okay, slippery elm bark is traditionally used to soothe the GI tract, and it works. So there you go. Okay, and you want to be mindful of that, and you can tell. Oh, you can tell if your body has had too much salt in it, and you can feel it. Okay, you can actually, like, if you are breathing, let's say you just got done eating an apple, and all you do is you taste the apple in your breath, that tells you that you need some repair, stomach lining. Okay, so get some slippery elm, DGL if you're able to. Okay, that lets you know, because you should not be, when you breathe out or whatever, you should not be tasting the apple. That's not normal. So that means that your stomach lining has been exposed to a bit too much salt, because excess salt there is highly acidic and it can eat away. Okay, so yes, be mindful of that. Great question. I'm glad you asked, because it goes right in line with our movement here and why we're pushing back against that radio frequency, because too much salt in the stomach and then radio frequency poisoning on top of that to heat it up. That's not good. That's not good. The gastrointestinal tract, yes, your digestive tract. Exactly. So there you go. And the hydration. Well, yeah, see, your colon needs to stay, it needs hydration. So yeah, and that's the other thing, y'all, salt water, if you don't have any bruises, or you're going to learn more about this, if you don't have bruises or any areas of injury, then radio frequency can only zap excess salt water that is trapped between the skin and your muscle. Yep, the salt water. Okay, that's the only thing it has to zap, and it will do it. If you've got a numbed ANS, you'll never know it's happening. If your autonomic nervous system is numbed, you will never know that it's happening. Oh, let me tell you something. Oh, I did. I thought, I'm standing in line at checkout with all the bleep, 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 and I could feel the tingling in a certain area of my body. And I said, okay, there's no bruise there. I said, what's getting zapped there? I said, there ain't no bruise there. And that's when the Lord said, think about it, salt water. Salt is a magnet for radio frequency. And I was learning about the salt, the sweat, if you will, being trapped. Okay? Well, yeah. And so slowly but surely we getting that out. And as that gets untrapped, it doesn't get zapped anymore, because it's not trapped, it's not hanging out. Circulation, it's being restored in that area. So that's the thing. As long as your body's circulation is working as it should, then that radio frequency poisoning, as long as you don't have the excess salt just hanging out in that spot, then radio frequency poisoning is not going to have the intended negative effect. You'll still have some exposure, but it won't numb anything, because there won't be anything sitting still long enough to be numbed. Think about that for a minute. The salt water has to get trapped there in order for it to be numbed. But if you have a numbed autonomic nervous system already, you will never know it. Okay? You will never know it. So because, yeah, because my ANS is not numbed anymore, I can feel these things. And so I know where, okay. So a little bit of ice packing, yep, because that helped to open up circulation to get that excess salt water that was trapped there moving on out. And then don't ever forget, heat rises. Okay, y'all, heat rises. So there you go. But yeah, it's an amazing thing. But yours truly, man, I'm discovering this stuff, and I'm like, okay, wow. Okay, so potassium. Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. That's what we talk about. I think a lot of these numbers are made up. I mean, they have to. Yeah, I just trying to tell us how much, and then that can also trick a person into focusing on the numbers again. What did we just learn in the book of Revelation, chapter 7? God don't care about them numbers. And so that's what I'm unlearning right now too, is that when I look at label, okay, that's all I have to go by. But I also need to keep in mind that that's likely a made up number. So the Lord said, okay, so you cook. Remember, when we cook, okay, so it's going to tell me, okay, that's got 120 milligrams of sodium per serving in the hamburger meat. Okay, I'm just giving you a number. That's kind of high though. But let's say that's what it says. All right, well, you're going to cook that hamburger. Okay, don't add salt. You cook it. You're going to cook out about 50% of that anyway. So, yeah. So that number really is just something to go by. But it's like by the time you cook the hamburger well done, you might get maybe, if not, just 50 or 60 milligrams of sodium itself in the burger. That's it. That's all that's going to be left. So, yeah. If that 120 was even correct. So, I mean, you don't really know. But like I said, we use those numbers as guides. It's all we have to go by, is the numbers that they make up. So, it's, right, we're doing the best we can. But we also listen to the body. Okay, we listen to the body. The body will tell us what it needs. It will tell us if it needs water. And if your body has excess salt on the inside, yes, it can dehydrate. Because I'm learning something. Okay, so hang tight with me about this. That we're told that salt holds water. Something no longer resonating with me about that. Because salt actually causes dehydration. Think about that. I said, hold on, cognitive dissonance. Move out of the way. Yeah, CD in action there. Because I said, how is it that salt dehydrates, but yet holds, how can it hold water if it actually dehydrates? Explain that to me. I know, right? Because that's what I'm noticing. As we get into further along in the detox, I said, I'm noticing the dehydration symptoms. And the only reason the salt got trapped where it got trapped is because I did have bruises here and there that were serving as trap. And then air pockets. Air pockets serve, when the bruise is gone, but there's still an air pocket, the air pocket now becomes the plug. And so that's what will keep, okay, that salt water, the sweat, trapped just beneath the surface of the skin. And so salt makes you think you're more thirsty than you really are. But salt in excess, and it can dehydrate. So how does salt hold water when it actually dehydrates you? I'm throwing that out there. Let's just chat. I know evil plays both sides, but when I learned about toxic substances and their, what known as their mechanism of action, okay, in other words, how they are metabolized and how they affect on the cellular level. Oh, I can go deep, but we're not going to do that here, okay? I can do that at the academy. But I'm asking a legitimate question. I mean, salt is a dehydrator. So how does it hold water? Then I think about the ocean. I said, well, the ocean's constantly moving. It's got salt water, but I want to say it must depend on the type of salt. That's the only thing I can come up with. Is that because we have different metals are salts. We have different metals. You have potassium, calcium, sodium, mercury, thallium, barium. Yeah, that's what you do with dead elements. You bury them. That was my chemistry teacher, Dr. Pix. I believe it was P-I-X-X. And that was her joke. So I'm going to give credit where credit due. Oh, I thought it was hilarious. I was in chemistry. That was in undergrad. And I was chemistry. I still got my chemistry book. Oh, you better believe it. And the periodic tables in my toxicology book too, so I still got my chemistry book. But yeah, because she had asked the class one day, she said, what do you do with dead elements? And I'm like, everybody else was just like, And she said, number 56 on the periodic table. And so I looked at it and I went, barium. I busted out laughing. That's pretty funny. Anyway, that was my chemistry teacher, Dr. Pix. She, yeah. Anywho, little science joke. But that's a metal. Okay, all metal salts. And so I'm thinking it must depend on the type of metal as to what's holding water. Because I'm going to tell you, it's not going to be sodium. Sodium in excess is what we consume the most. I mean, sodium would be the one. It's got a very low atomic mass by itself. But that's the one I can tell you dehydrates. So if sodium dehydrating you, then what the heck would be holding the water? If not sodium. Yeah. Well, hello there. Hello. Okay, it says too much salt causes cholesterol, where the salt scars the arteries, so the body produces a gloop to fill the damage holes. Okay. Over time. Okay, I can see that. Well, I'm going to say that can also be called calluses. But I also can tell you from experience that calluses will heal too. Had one on the bottom of my foot. The Lord took care of that. It healed it. His name is Jesus. So, salt dissolves in water. Okay, yeah. And it makes a saline solution. But the sodium doesn't hold the water. If sodium actually dehydrates. So, we're going to talk more about that going forward because I'm curious now. It's got to be, maybe it's thallium, maybe it is aluminum. Aluminum is a metal. It's also salt. All metals are salts. So maybe it's the type of salt that holds water in the body. I don't know. But I'm telling you, it's not sodium. No, because sodium is what dehydrates you. Probably along with the other metal salts. But it's that dehydration. It's that excess salt that can also trick you into thinking that you're thirsty when you're not. So that you will consume more water. Water is needed for what? Radio frequency poisoning. If you've got we go right back around to what I just talked about. So, that's that. And yes, hello Melissa, hello everyone else joining in. Thank you. Okay, so the property of salt means it readily attracts and holds water molecules from the surrounding environment due to the ionic charges of its component. Okay, it's salt thirst. So for water to dilute its concentration, drawing it from any available source. Okay. Holds the water molecule. Okay. Well, I get it. The ionic charges. Well, yeah, because water serve as salt in the water is what acts as the magnet for radio frequency poisoning. So I get that part. Ionic charges, electricity. Ionic is really, yeah, fancy term for electricity, okay. So, electrical charge. Makes sense. I'll talk about how that water gets trapped just under the surface of the skin. That's what gets zapped if you don't have any injuries or whatever. But again, if you've got a numb autonomic nervous system, you would never know it's happening. And you would think that you're having a hot flash. When what really just happened is two things. Your body's detoxing from an electrical shock. So in effect, salt does dehydrate by absorbing water and holding it away from where it's needed in the body. Thank you. The salt itself is not holding water in the body. That's my point. See, we were led to believe growing up that all that salt that we're consuming is what is holding the water in the body. That's not true. It just don't make sense. The sodium side of it. So thank you. Because it holds water basically it takes the water away from the areas in the body that need it. It dehydrates. So there you go. That wraps up this one for today, y'all. Let's just chat. Thank y'all for joining us and for joining us on the replay. I'm sure you share your insights on the in the comments too. We're gonna explore this as part of our movement combating radio frequency for healthier living, because it's very important that we understand what's actually happening and not continue to believe the lies that we've been told about salts and how our biological body functions based on the salt. But yeah, because it dehydrates rather than whole. Actually, you would think that the salt would, they say our body is made up of a good percentage of salt water. Okay, I can believe that. But I also, because you also have potassium, calcium. So when you say our body, so what salt are you talking about? Is our body made up of what they say, like 90-some% sodium? No, it's a combination. You got salt, sodium, calcium, potassium. Okay, So you have a combination. So yeah, even though our body is made up of primarily all the different salt water that runs through our body, but it's a combination of salt, not just sodium by itself. That's why I wonder about whether or not what component is it that actually keep water in the body. That's where we're at, and I don't think it's sodium. No. So, other minerals, metals. It's metal. Minerals. When we talk about minerals, you make me think of things like copper, zinc, manganese, stuff like that. When you talk about minerals, but metals are salts. And then you also have non-metals, but we'll dive into that. It's all part of our ongoing research. Okay, this is all part of our ongoing research to combat that radio frequency for healthier living. So I thank y'all. I know we got some people downloading the free PDF flyer for our fundraiser right off the website, and that gives you just a brief synopsis of what the funding is for in our movement for radio frequency education and awareness. That would be RF. And so, yes, all funding goes into the ministry, yes, and everything that you all sow into this ministry goes right back into our growing community of spiritual warriors for Christ. And so, yes, the funding is being used for, I have some items that I purchased. I will put some stuff together for you all. That's another thing that I did not put that on the flyer, but we're going to put that, you're going to learn more about that because we're going to do some demonstration. But what I talk about, what's happening inside the body when radio frequency finds, okay, if you will, well, it's drawn to, because that salt molecule in air pocket, and then the radio frequency hits it because that salt is acting as a magnet for the radio frequency. So zoop, it gets zapped, and then it gets hot. When it gets hot, things expand. When they expand, there's salt and things like that. You have a little salt inside the air pocket. Okay, you have a little water molecule with salt inside the air pocket as well, because it has to have something for it to get hot. Because when it gets hot, that is the stickiness. Just like, and then you have your, what I call a mucus pocket that's carrying more salt. It finds its way because it's magnetic, right, inside the body. And then you add radio frequency to it. That ping. Okay, see, I can explain that all day long, but I got some stuff to show you all, a visual of that actually happening. And so we're working on putting that together for you. And it's just some little arts and crafts. Okay, that's a lot of where the funding will go to as well, because I want y'all to be able to get a visual. A lot of people were audio and visual learners, and so I want to give you that so you can understand that that's what's happening inside your body when you feel a slight discomfort or any kind of pain. What's really happening? Okay, because it does involve the nerves, yes, but this is why yours truly does not take anything that will numb away the pain. No, I want to know where it's at so I can go, and then walk it out or ice pack it out. There you go. I'm no longer tricked into numbing when I'm like, no. If there's salt water there, radio frequency can do that just fine. I ain't gonna help it. You know what I'm saying? All right, so I want to know it there. I want to know it there so we know where to self-care. All right, that's that. So thank you all right, for helping us out in that. And I look forward to bringing you a whole lot more about radio frequency and its negative impacts on our health, so we can continue to make better choices for healthier living and beyond. That's what it's all about, taking better care of this temple for the Holy Spirit. Sending love and light to all fellow warriors. Thank you for watching, listening, and for your continued support. Till next time, we'll show some gratitude to the Heavenly Father. And you keep being you. In Jesus' name, amen.